The first thing I heard was laughter behind me, low and careless, like none of this was real. "Who sent her?" Someone whispered over the radio. "Is this some kind of joke?" I did not turn. I was already flat against the dust, cheek resting on the rifle, breath slow, controlled, steady. The ground was hot, vibrating with every burst of fire. 200 yards ahead, a machine gun nest had locked half our platoon behind a shattered irrigation wall, trapping them in open ground with nowhere to move. The air tasted like metal and dry soil, thick and choking. It was 2:36 in the afternoon, and the sun burned straight through the sky. Rounds cracked over us like tearing cloth. Beside me, Private Leah Brooks, 19 years old, lay bleeding into the dirt, her leg torn open. She kept whispering she was fine. Her voice was shaking. She was not fine. They did not believe I could change anything. I was quiet. I did not speak unless needed. People mistake silence for weakness. Through my scope, I found the man directing the fire. Wind drifting left to right. I exhaled slowly. The rifle spoke once, calm and final. Subscribe to my channel, Lady Veteran Stories, for more real military stories, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. My name is Sergeant Natalie Cross. In the spring of 2011, I was assigned to a reconnaissance platoon operating outside Fort Ridgefield, a quiet training and support post near the farming town of Pine Hollow, West Virginia. We were preparing for an overseas deployment, running live field exercises across wide fields, irrigation cuts, and weathered barns that had long ago stopped serving any peaceful purpose. The land looked ordinary, almost calm, but every inch of it was built to test how we reacted under pressure. That afternoon was meant to be routine. A patrol movement through dry canals and broken fencing, nothing we had not practiced before. We had walked that ground so many times it felt familiar under our boots, predictable. Training days usually followed patterns. You expected noise, simulated resistance, maybe a few surprises. You did not expect real danger. By then, I had worn the uniform for 9 years. I enlisted at 18, leaving a small town in Lark County, Missouri, where everyone knew everyone and nothing ever changed. My father worked long days as a mechanic, hands always stained with oil. My mother was a school nurse who believed quiet lives were safer lives. Neither of them understood why I chose this path. Even fewer understood why I chose the long, lonely road of becoming a sniper. Sniper school strips everything down to patience and control. It does not care how loud you are or how strong you look. It does not care if you are a woman. It cares about stillness, about breath, about solving problems under pressure when your body wants to move and your mind wants to panic. It teaches you that one decision, made at the right moment, can change everything. When I joined the platoon, I was the only female sniper attached to the unit. Staff Sergeant Olivia Grant was our backbone, steady and disciplined, the kind of leader who never raised her voice unless it mattered. Lieutenant Brooke Ramirez commanded with quiet confidence, sharp and observant, always watching more than she spoke. Both of them trusted performance over words. Not everyone else did. The doubt was subtle, never direct. It lived in small moments, in the way some soldiers double-check my rifle before missions, in the jokes whispered just loud enough to hear, in the hesitation when decisions had to be made quickly. I did not argue. I did not defend myself. In this line of work, proof comes from action, not conversation. That morning, intelligence briefed us on a simulated insurgent element operating within the training zone. The scenario suggested light resistance, scattered harassment fire, nothing organized, a controlled exercise meant to sharpen movement and coordination. We moved out just after midday, sun climbing, heat pressing down on open ground. Dust lifted under every step, clinging to skin and gear. For the first hour, everything followed the expected pattern: standard patrol spacing, clear communication, routine scanning, the kind of calm that feels almost deceptive. Then something shifted. At 2 in the afternoon, the exercise stopped feeling like an exercise. The opposing force had moved into elevated drainage lines, using the terrain better than anticipated. Within seconds, coordinated machine gun fire locked our advance. Dirt exploded around us. The sound was sharp, disciplined, too controlled for random resistance. We dropped low, searching for cover where there was almost none. Movement froze across the field. Communication tightened. What was supposed to be routine turned into a test of reaction and survival. It was still training, but the rounds were real. and real mistakes carry real consequences. Then, somewhere behind me, I heard it. Laughter. The first warning came as a hiss of static across the radio, thin and broken, like the signal itself was struggling to breathe. For nearly 3 minutes, we could not reach second squad. In training, that almost never happened unless something had gone wrong. And when communication fades, uncertainty fills the space fast. Lieutenant Ramirez ordered a bounding movement toward a low stone barrier near an irrigation ditch ahead of us. It was the only cover in open ground. The heat rising from the earth blurred distance, bending shapes into waves. Dust lifted with every step, hanging in the air, making it harder to see and harder to think. Then the first burst of automatic fire ripped across the field. It was sharp, controlled, deliberate, not random, not careless. Whoever set it up knew exactly where to aim. Dirt jumped around us, snapping against helmets and gear. Instinct forced us down. Private Leah Brooks dropped hard beside me, air punched from her lungs. A heartbeat later she cried out, sharp and raw. A round had torn through her calf. Blood spread quickly into the dust, dark and heavy. "Contact front!" someone shouted, but none of us needed the words. The field had already told us. I steadied my breathing and brought my eye to the optic, searching for muzzle flash, for any sign of the gun. Nothing obvious. The nest was hidden well, tucked behind terrain and shadow, positioned by someone who understood angles and patience. "Cross, can you see it?" Staff Sergeant Grant's voice came through the net, controlled but tight. "Working," I whispered. I adjusted elevation, sweeping across broken fence lines, irrigation culverts, and shallow depressions where shadow gathered. The world narrowed to fragments of movement and shape. Then I saw him, not the gunner, the one behind him, standing slightly higher, body language sharp, hand raised as he directed fire, calm in the chaos. Confident, leader. He believed the berm protected him, believed distance and confusion made him invisible. The wind shifted lightly, brushing dust across the ground from left to right. Small particles drifted through the scope, showing direction, speed, pattern. Every detail mattered. Around me, tension built. Breath grew faster. Somewhere behind, a soldier muttered under strain, "We need someone else on that. Someone else." As if I was not already there, already calculating, already carrying the weight of what came next. Doubt does not shout. It lingers quietly, slipping between seconds, waiting for hesitation, waiting for failure. Leah's hand found my sleeve, fingers weak but tight. Her voice was barely more than a breath. "Please." I did not look away from the scope. I nodded once, steady and certain. Lieutenant Ramirez crawled in beside me, low and steady, dust clinging to her sleeves. "Natalie, talk to me," she said, voice calm but firm, the kind of tone leaders use when seconds matter. "Two targets," I answered quietly. "Primary is command and control. Secondary is the gunner." She did not respond right away. For a moment she watched my face, not doubting, not questioning, just weighing the decision. Trust is built in silence more than words. "Your call," she said. That mattered more than anything else in that moment. Behind us, Corporal Jenna Whitaker pressed a tourniquet tight around Leah's leg, hands slick with blood and dust. Leah's breathing was shallow now, teeth clenched, trying not to cry out again. The dirt beneath her had turned dark and heavy, soaked through with red. Every second stretched longer. We could not move. Every time someone lifted their head even slightly, rounds cracked overhead, close enough to feel in the chest. The opposing force had us locked in, pinned from an angle that left no room to maneuver. Then the radio crackled again from another squad monitoring the field. "Who sent her?" a voice muttered. "You sure about this?" I let the noise fade away. Sniping is not about the trigger. It is about the decision before the trigger. About understanding which single action will shift the entire outcome. If I took the gunner first, another would slide in behind the weapon. The fire would continue. The pressure would not break. But remove the leader, and confusion spreads. Orders vanish. Timing collapses. Seconds appear, and seconds are life. The distance measured just under 300 yards. The wind brushed lightly across the field, left to right, carrying dust in thin, drifting lines. I felt my pulse slow, steady, controlled. Years of training took over, the rhythm carved into muscle memory during long days in Georgia pine forests, lying still until breath and body moved as one. Inhale, half exhale, pause. Through the scope, the leader leaned forward, mouth open as he shouted a command I could not hear, confident, unaware. I pressed the trigger. The recoil was soft, almost gentle, the report sharp but contained. Through the optic, I watched him drop instantly, no drama, no movement, just sudden stillness. For a single heartbeat, nothing changed. Then the machine gun faltered, rhythm breaking, uncertainty creeping into the fire. That was my window. Chaos does not always arrive like an explosion. Sometimes it loosens quietly, like a knot slipping apart one strand at a time. Through my scope, I saw the gunner hesitate. His shoulders stiffened, head turning slightly as he tried to understand why the voice behind him had vanished. The rhythm of the weapon faltered, uneven now, uncertain. I shifted my position just enough to correct for the change in his posture. He had moved closer to the berm, partially shielded, giving me less to work with. Dust drifted through my sight picture, thin and slow. My breathing stayed steady, controlled. "Cross, you good?" Staff Sergeant Grant's voice came through the net, calm but edged with urgency. Before I could answer, Lieutenant Ramirez spoke, firm and decisive. "Send it. Trust again." I tightened my focus. The gunner leaned forward, trying to recover control, hands gripping the weapon tighter than before. His movement exposed a narrow window. I pressed the trigger. The second shot felt smoother than the first, clean and final. Through the optic, the gunner collapsed forward, and the machine gun went silent instantly. For the first time since contact began, the field lost that relentless hammering sound. The silence felt almost unreal, heavy and unfamiliar. "Move," Grant ordered. Second squad surged forward, low and fast, boots pounding against dry earth. Two soldiers reached Leah and lifted her carefully, dragging her toward the stone barrier while Whitaker kept pressure on the wound. Another wounded soldier followed, pulled by his gear across the dirt. Every movement was urgent, but controlled. I stayed where I was, prone and watching. Removing leadership creates confusion, but confusion can turn unpredictable. Panic can trigger desperate reactions. Through the scope, I saw two members of the opposing force scramble toward the fallen weapon. Younger, uncertain, their movements lacked coordination. They tried to reposition the gun, glancing around for direction that was no longer there. I did not fire again. Without command, without structure, their confidence broke. One hesitated too long. The other backed away. Within seconds, they abandoned the position and scattered across the drainage line. The pressure lifted. Moments later, the exercise control team called an immediate halt. Voices replaced gunfire. Medics moved quickly across the field, kneeling beside the wounded, working with quiet urgency. The tension that had held every muscle tight began to release, slow and heavy. Leah was pale when they reached her, face streaked with dust and sweat, but her eyes were open, conscious, breathing. She looked at me once, squeezed my hand weakly, then the medics lifted her onto the evacuation stretcher and carried her toward the waiting vehicle. I watched until she disappeared behind the ridge. Only then did I sit up, the weight of the rifle settling back into my arms. The dust in the air slowly fell, the field returning to stillness. As I walked back toward the regroup point, one soldier from another squad passed me quietly. He did not smile. He did not joke. He only said, "Guess we know who sent her." No one laughed this time. Back at Fort Ridgefield, everything felt different. The noise of the field was gone, but the weight of it followed us home. Training days usually ended with laughter, gear scattered across bunks, stories retold too loudly in the hallway. That night, the barracks were quiet. Leah went into surgery just after sunset. The round had missed the main artery by inches. The doctor said she would walk again, but recovery would be long. She would not deploy with us that year. That cost her more than the wound. It cost the squad, too. A unit moves like a single body. When one part is pulled away, the balance shifts. No one said it out loud, but we all felt it. The empty bunk across the room spoke louder than any words. I sat on the edge of my cot, Rifle laid across my lap, cleaning it piece by piece. Every movement slow, careful, familiar. Snipers do not celebrate outcomes. We revisit them, every angle, every breath, every decision. I kept seeing the moment through my scope, the leader's posture, upright and unaware, the instant before the shot, the stillness after. Everything had depended on timing, on patience, on one controlled movement. If that moment had been off by even a fraction, the outcome could have been different. Staff Sergeant Grant entered quietly and sat across from me. For several minutes she said nothing, just watched as I worked, the steady sound of metal and cloth filling the space between us. Finally she spoke. "You changed that field." I did not look up. "That's the job." Her eyes stayed on me. "It's more than that." I understood what she meant, even if I did not respond. Something had shifted. The doubt that once followed me through every patrol, every setup, every quiet moment in Pine Hollow felt lighter now. Not gone, but quieter, less present, like distant noise fading over time. Still, one thought would not leave. If I had missed, Leah might not have survived long enough for the medics to reach her. Precision carries responsibility. It is not pride. It is not glory. It is weight. And weight never feels light. 2 weeks later, we returned to the same field. The same irrigation ditches cut through the dry ground. The same broken fencing leaned under its own weight. Heat pressed down from above, heavy and familiar, carrying the same dust, the same silence before movement. Nothing had changed in the landscape, but everything had changed in us. This time I heard no laughter, no whispered doubt, no hesitation in the voices around me. Only steady breathing, controlled movement, and the quiet rhythm of a unit that had learned something it could not unlearn. We moved into position with practiced coordination. Spacing was tighter, communication clearer, every step deliberate. When you return to a place where pressure once broke you, the memory lingers beneath the surface. Contact came fast. A sudden burst of fire from the drainage line, sharp and disciplined, echoing across the same ground where Leah had fallen. Instinct dropped us low, rifles forward, scanning, adjusting, responding. Lieutenant Ramirez's voice cut clean across the net, calm and immediate. Cross priority target, no pause, no question, trust had shifted. I settled into position, rifle steady, breath controlled. Through the optic, the field narrowed into fragments of movement and shadow. The target revealed itself in posture, in confidence, in the way one figure directed others without exposing too much. The mechanics were the same: wind, distance, timing, control. But the moment that mattered most was not the shot, it was the silence after, the silence where no one questioned, the silence where doubt no longer existed. The understanding that capability is not measured by noise or volume, but by consistency, by reliability, when outcomes hang in balance. The shot broke clean. The field shifted. Movement opened. The unit advanced. Later that night, back under dim barracks lights, my phone vibrated softly on the metal table beside my bunk. The caller ID showed the medical ward. "Leah." Her voice came through thin but steady. "Heard you shut them up." I allowed a small breath. "I did my job." A pause, then she spoke again, quieter but certain. "You did more than that." Her words stayed with me longer than any evaluation, longer than any training score or report. In the military, respect is rarely given freely. It is earned in moments where outcomes could have gone either way, in seconds where hesitation means loss. That day in Pine Hollow, something irreversible happened. Not to the opposing force, to us. The shift was not loud. It did not come with ceremony or recognition. It showed itself in small changes. In the way soldiers looked toward my position without hesitation, in the way orders came without doubt, in the absence of whispers behind my back. They stopped asking who sent me. They started asking where I wanted to set up. Years later, the sound that stays with me is not the gunfire. It is that first quiet laugh behind me, light and careless, carried on the wind like it did not matter. Not because it hurt, because it taught me something simple and lasting. People often measure strength by volume, by presence, by how loud someone speaks. But real capability is quieter than that. It lives in patience, in control, in the willingness to wait until the right moment arrives. Time moved forward as it always does. Leah eventually left the army after her recovery. The doctors repaired the damage, but the scar remained, a thin reminder of a hot afternoon in Pine Hollow. She walks with a slight limp, now slower than before, but steady. Every December, a card arrives in the mail, handwritten, simple, always ending the same way. Still standing, still grateful, still moving forward. Lieutenant Ramirez earned her promotion and became Captain Ramirez, leading with the same calm clarity she had shown that day in the dust. Staff Sergeant Grant completed her service and retired with full honors, respected by everyone who ever stood under her command. Corporal Whitaker went on to teach combat lifesaver courses, passing on the knowledge that keeps wounded soldiers alive long enough to come home. As for me, I stayed long enough to become an instructor. I trained new snipers, many of them young women from small towns few people could place on a map. Quiet voices, steady hands, sharp minds. They reminded me of who I had once been, lying prone for the first time, unsure whether the field would accept me. I told them what experience had taught me. You do not need to prove yourself with words. The field speaks louder than anything you can say. But when you settle behind that rifle, when breath slows and the world narrows, understand what your decision carries. You are not just ending noise, you are shaping outcomes. Every shot creates consequences, some immediate, some that echo long after the dust is settled. You carry those moments with you, in memory, in silence, in the quiet understanding of what responsibility truly means. And that weight stays, even when the battlefield is far behind you. I do not carry that day in Pine Hollow as a victory. I carry it as a memory. A 19-year-old soldier lying in the dust, whispering that she was fine when her hands were shaking and her uniform was dark with blood. A lieutenant who did not hesitate when it mattered, who trusted her sniper without asking for reassurance. A squad that learned how quickly doubt can turn into respect when lives are on the line. The line between those two things is thinner than people think. Most people imagine heroics as loud moments, speeches, recognition, applause. They picture flags waving and someone standing tall in the spotlight. Most of the time, it is nothing like that. It is a woman pressed into dry earth, adjusting for wind she can barely feel. It is the discipline to slow your breath when everyone else is breathing fast. It is understanding that two controlled shots can stop a field from swallowing your friends whole. No one asks who sent her anymore. They do not need to. They just scan the horizon to see if she is already in position. Subscribe to my channel, Lady Veteran Stories, for more real military stories, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from.